Hey everyone, quick interruption before we start. I want to talk about the 500 subscriber special, which is Space Crusade. Whoa! So if you really want to see it, make sure you subscribe, because the quicker we get to 500, the quicker I review this. Alright. Heading in. Exploit Zero. So Exploit Zero is a co-op cyberpunk skirmish game. Sort of. We'll get into that later. Where you fight against AI-controlled security teams and try to complete 1 to 3 objectives and escape the board, generally from the other side. Now, this game was made by a company called Stalker 7, who have done a few other little games that I may cover in the future. And it was also published by them, so they're self-published, so go check them out. You can get it on the Wargaming Vault, and we're good to go. Well, look, enough mincing. Let's get to the setting, shall we? So the strange thing about this game is that I've got nothing to talk about in the setting, but also, at the same time, do have something to talk about. So the setting of Exploit Zero is actually optional. You can choose whether or not you want to have the setting, or maybe you can just make up your own. You know, you could have it set in any cyberpunk game. You could have it with RoboCop, you could do Shadowrun, you could do Cyberpunk, Judge Dredd, Blade Runner, you know, whatever you'd like to set your game in, that's fine. You're allowed to do that, that's not a problem. And the rules are pretty much stretchable enough that that's fine. However, they do have their own setting, if you're interested in it, which of course is set in the dystopian city of New Kowloon City. Basically, Kowloon City, as far as I know, it still stands in this setting, and it was planned to be upgraded, but basically China had a population issue, and so instead of upgrading Kowloon City, they decided to build a whole new city. Now, of course, New Kowloon City is separated into the upper part of the city, where the 1% of the 1% lives, and all the mega corporations have all their company headquarters and stuff like that, and of course the bottom part, the rest of us scum, live in the lower city called Darktown. And, you know, that's basically standard cyberpunk shithole, pretty much. Which is great news for your team of mercenaries. They are very happy about this, because they can now make a quick buck off the highest bidder. Now, there are also factions, of course, in the city. The NKPD, understaffed and over budget. 2 groups of the other guys in the flavor of people who love cyberware and people who hate cyberware. So, you know, they're always good to have. As well as a smattering of the worst corpo plugs you've ever seen, covering pharmaceuticals, security bros, and massive gun runners. This is, of course, rounded out with organized crime cosplaying as a corporation. Once again, great news for your agents, not so great news for everyone else who lives in the city. Overall, I think the setting is interesting, but I enjoy the flexibility of just being able to make up my own crap. And, you know, just adapting a relevant cyberpunk setting if you wish. So that's really up to you. And yes, they do have rules for metahumans, so you can do Shadowrun if you wish. So okay, so our regular perps are of course here. Tape measure and our friend the piece of terrain, whatever you can find. So that's great news for that stuff. Then, of course, you will need some miniatures. Now, miniatures are a little bit more special in this one. So, of course, you'll need some of your agents here. These are the guys that the players will control. So, I've got one of each of the variety. And then you'll also need some security forces as well. And you'll need 3 levels with 10 miniatures each. So, I color-coded mine. We have our green guys, who are our level 1 security. Now they are wearing blue because I felt like them wearing green to make them look a little bit too army. We've got these orange fellas who are level 2, and these red guys that are level 3. The reason I did this is because I wanted to be very clear what the hell was attacking you on the board. You might also want some extra miniatures for enemy agents. So basically enemy agents are basically your guys, but the bad version of them. And of course, you may want a mech, because there is the option of having a giant mech suit as part of security. They don't pop up super option, but it is an option. So that's great. Now, of course, we'll also need some dice arenos. So we'll need 4 kinds of dice. We'll need a D10, we'll need a D8, we'll need a D6, and we'll need our friend the Foot Crippler, the D4. Now, that being said, you will also need 2 copies of these dice, preferably per person if you can, but it's not absolutely necessary. And it'll become apparent why you'll need 2 of each of these dice. You do not need 2 D4s. So good news, you'll only ever wake up one night and step on 1 D4 on the floor that you accidentally left there. You don't have to worry about the other dice. And of course, as per usual, you will need a copy of the rules. I suggest buying the Omnibus, as it's the 2nd edition, comes with 2 of the 3 extra rulebooks from 1st edition built in. Not as usual though, you will also need some templates. So you'll need a 5-inch smoke grenade template, a 3-inch blast template, and an 8-inch flamethrower template, or shotgun template, whatever you want to use with it. These are for the different weapons that you can get. You don't necessarily need them, but obviously if you've got them it's much easier. I 3D printed these. You can also just use them from Warhammer or Kill Team or whatever game that you happen to be able to find these blast tokens in. Okay, so we've got all our stuff now. Now we just have to create our agents. Entryway secured. Maybe you want Cyber Bobby, maybe you want Raven, maybe you want Hawk. But the point is that you need to be able to create them first. So you and your friends, either real or the voices in your head, each get an agent to control. Generally you want 4 to 5 agents per mission. You can of course split these between less players, so if you have 2 players, someone can do 3, someone can do 2, or you can both do 2. Or, you know, you can take your ball and go home for the solo experience if you wish. Now, but how do you create them? Well, first you start with an agent specialization. There are 5 to pick from, and each specialize in a certain part in the game. So you got Ronins and Razors, who specialize in ranged and melee combat. Splicers are our big computer nerds, you know, with drones, so that's great. Sawbones, the medics, and finally Shivers have psychic abilities. Ooh, they can also take some other stuff as well, but you know. You want to write down what actions the class specializes in, so that you know when you get the specialization rolls, which we'll talk about more in activation. You then pick your Combat Augmented Program, or CAP. These are special abilities that you have access to, and they come in 3 flavors: Combat, Cyber, and Support. There's a 4th flavor, but only Shivers can take that, and it's just Psionics. Now, you can take any of these, so you could have your Sawbones specialize in combat protocols, but that probably wouldn't be a great idea since classes specialize in those protocols as well. So, but these do things like, you know, temporarily give you boosts for a turn, placing shields, stunning enemies, and even giving one of your actions to another player. So, you know, that stuff's pretty cool. Then you get to pick your equipment. You have a primary weapon, which you get to pick from a class of weapons. So there are melee weapons, which obviously just are melee, so they're easy, straight out of the way. You got your standard gun, which is like a rifle or an SMG. A holdout weapon, so sort of low-end pistols, you know, if there was a real-world example, like a Derringer or something like that, or like a silenced PPK or something like that. And then you've got your SADs, which will make the enemy sad, and these are your shotguns, flamethrowers, and other spread weapons that you might have, and they use the flame template as previously stated. And finally, you have Ronins. They get a couple of extra weapons in the form of an energy weapon that is quite strong but can only shoot once, or heavy weapons that basically just shoot grenades all day. So that's pretty cool. You then get 3 other additional slots to place onto your guy. These can include better armor, better ammo, materials, throwables, mundane and explosive throwables, and finally, of course, drones, which splicers, specialize in drone stuff other classes don't. You can also get access to experimental cybernetics that will give you permanent boosts, but at the cost of having a chance for them to malfunction at the end of each turn. And when they do, they hobble you, basically. You run worse than if you didn't have them. And that's it. That's it for making an agent. Well, setting up's pretty easy, so that's good stuff. First, you roll on the mission table to get a randomized mission. You just do the Gun Monkeys mission from the suggested missions. You place some terrain, you add some enemy installations, you add 2 objective markers, and you pick a side of the table for your guys to come in, and then the opposite edge is their escape point. Okay, so we'll chuck down some terrain, I'll add a mast here, 2 sentry guns, we'll add some objective markers, 12 inch away from the center, and at least 12 inches away from each other. We'll set up the agents here, and we're done. And now we're ready to play. Taking a turn. So what can you do? It's your turn. What do you do? Well, first let's get turn order down. So turn order is pretty straightforward. The agents go first. All the agents go first. Now, when an agent is activated, he must completely finish his actions, which we will discuss in like 2 seconds, and then the next agent can activate, and so on and so forth until all the agents are done. Then once the agents are done, it's HSEC's turn. The security, here they come. They're coming for ya. Masculine mannies, and they're coming hard. So, how do you do? Well, first, you get a free 6-inch move. Cool. You get that for free. Completely free. Great. The rest of your actions are decided by these. These are your extra actions. Each player gets 1 of each dice to do an action with. So, it's pretty straightforward. You want to move again, you roll a dice. You want to shoot at someone, you roll a dice. You want to hack a computer, you roll a dice. Bang, done, super easy. So, what's the target number and how many actions can I take? Well, you can take a number of actions equal to the amount of dice you have left. So once you roll a dice, that's it. That D6 is now used regardless of whether or not you're successful. So you get 4 actions a turn, basically. Sort of. You may not get all 4 of them. Now, what's the target number? It's really straightforward. Everything succeeds on a 4. Every single action in the game is a 4. Now, there are, of course, some modifications that may happen to this dice. For example, if you're shooting at someone, cover, something along the lines of that. Or maybe there's a computer system with a really high-end like defense system, and so you've got to roll more than the 4. You might have to roll a 6 or an 8, which in that case, you may want to use higher dice because you can't exactly succeed on a 6 if you need an 8. However, why do you need 2 dice each then, Vampz? Well, that is a good question, imaginary person who I'm not actually talking to. Your class specializes in a set of actions. Depending on the class, they specialize in different things. For example, Shivers and Sawbones, they specialize in movement. Ronins specialize in gunplay. Splicers specialize in hacking. Of course, Razors specialize in close combat, and Sawbones specialize in helping other people, as well as movement, as I've already said. But some people, they wear multiple hats. So almost every class specializes in their form of cap, which is great. So, but what the hell does that mean? What does specializing mean? Well, specializing means you get to roll 2 of these suckers. That's right, you get to roll 2 dice instead of 1. And that means that if you fail on 1 dice but succeed on the other, you succeed. So as you can see, specializing, using the right character for the right job is an important thing to get. Now the other thing is let's take Cyber Bobby here. Cyber Bobby. If you can guess the pun on that, good job. But Cyber Bobby here, he wants to activate his special ability. He wants to activate his ability that gives him extra prowess in shooting. So he's got to roll his dice. Now he's going to choose to use D8s because he wants to succeed at this. And he gets 2 dice, so it's pretty good. So let's roll the dice. And he rolls a 6 and a 3. So what does this mean? Well, it means he succeeds at activating his ability. He's used the 6. Now, his dice are spent, of course. Or are they? Well, see, in this particular scenario, yes, they are. But let's say Cyber Bobby instead rolled a double 6 instead. What does that mean? Well, because he rolled over the target number of 4, he critically succeeds at the task. So it's great. So what does that do? Well, you succeed at the task, you do the task, and then you get to keep your dice. It becomes a free action, like you move at the start of the turn. That's pretty cool. Of course, though, there are minor downsides to this, and that is, if I roll a double one, which I didn't, but let's just say I did. If I roll a double one, oh no, Cyber Bobby fails that action, but he critically fails that action, and he's knocked down. He's on the ground. He's beturtled. He can't get up. So that's really cool. I really like that. I think it's a really good way to sort of activate, and of course, you get to decide how important things are, and also, if you specialize, maybe shooting a guard with the D6s, even if you do really need to hit, is not a crazy thing, because you get 2 of them. And Cyber Bobby gets a bunch of bonuses from shooting people now. So, oh, look at that. Success. Now, if your guy is knocked prone, he gets -2 to his defense. So it can be, you know, it's a risk, but it's a risk that's almost always worth taking. Now, speaking of defense, let's talk combat. Combat. How the hell does that work? I hear you saying. Well, let's take a sticky beak, shall we? So we have Cyber Bobby here, and we're going to use a level 1 security guard on the other side. So we're going to start with ranged combat. So we've got Cyber Bobby here, and we've got our security guard over here. Now, of course, the first thing to do is, can I shoot him? Now, we're just going to use the regular range gun here, which is 18 inches. I think he's pretty safe. Then what he does is we take the dice here. Now, we'll roll the d6, just, you know, because we're subbing out the green dice. They're clashing. Okay, so we're just going to use the d6s here just for an example. So Bobby shoots this guy, and he got a 7. Now, obviously the 3 would be a miss, but the 4 is a hit. So what happens with the other guy? Well, basically he rolls his defense dice, which is pretty much always a d6 unless otherwise stated. And in this case, he rolled a 3, so he dies horribly. But there is some things that you gotta take into account with ranged combat. So, for example, let's just say this guy's behind a wall. What happens then? Well, we'll say this is an obstruction. An obstruction means that you get a -1 penalty to hit. So in this particular case, we can roll Cyber Bobby's attack again, but this time he needs 5s. Now he did get a 6, so that's still a hit. And obstructions don't give any extra defense, so a 5 would be good enough though. But let's just say we go up a terrain, and we'll say that this bush here is light terrain. So we've got our bush, it's light terrain. What the hell does that mean? Well, now I'm -2 to hit with Cyber Bobby, and this guy also gets +1 defense. So I roll my dice, I've rolled a critical foul, but let's just say I rolled a 5 and a 3. Well, that would still not be good enough either way. So, you know, maybe I take my second shot and I use my d8s this time. And this time I get a 6. That is good enough. So we've got our 6 here. Fantastic. And then what we do is we have this guy roll his defense dice. Now this time he gets 1 dice, but he only needs a 2. And he rolled a 5. So fantastic. He doesn't get horribly mauled because of the bush. Oh, sorry, he needs a 5. My apologies. Light cover gives it +1 defense. Now let's just say we take a nice big heavy piece of cover here. This big pillar. Now once again, Bobby needs, you know, he needs a 6 to hit still. Alright, so Bobby rolls again. And we've got an 8 and a 7. So that's a hit. And then this guy gets a 2+ save this time instead of a 3+ save. And he rolled a 6 anyway, but as you can see, it makes it a lot harder to hit. Let's say we're using the SAD instead. So, unlike regular guns, what this does is you just measure it from here. And of course it hits the guy. Now, I just need to roll to hit with the gun, so... God damn it, Cyber Bobby. Let's, there we go, that's for the footage. So this time he hits. Now the reason he hits is because, boom, right? The guy's in the template, he gets hit, but the dude still gets his defense roll. And he still gets his 2+ defense roll. Okay, 3 will be fine. So 3 would be enough for defense here. But let's just say that there was another dude here in front of the piece of terrain, and there was another dude who was sort of, let's say it was shot like this. So we'll put this guy sort of like semi in cover over here. Maybe this counts as like light cover. So in that case, this guy here would get nothing. So he's dead. And then this guy would get his cover, he's fine, and then this guy would get, I'm going to give him an obstruction, which he would be fine on. Now obviously there could be some other penalties or bonuses. For example, smart ammo is one of the more popular ones, and this would give Cyberbobby +1 to hit and then -1 to hit on the rolls, and we'd have to take that into account, which in that case, this guy would definitely be dead. The guy in front is absolutely dead, and this guy would still be alive, but could possibly die easier, basically. And yes, even though it is a shotgun, it can have smart ammo. There's nothing to say it can't. Same with the explosive gun, it can have smart ammo. Now, CQC, Metal Gear. So we got Dragon here. Dragon is a rather angry gent. He likes to stab people. So we'll put a level 1 security guard. Now obviously, so what happens is that on Dragon's turn, he goes, I don't like your goddamn face, and he moves into close combat. Now the way this works is that each person gets to roll their dice. So we'll say for Dragon, he rolls his doubles, of course, which he would fail to hit, but we'll say he hits. Then the other guy would get to roll, and he also hits. So what the hell happens here? Well, basically they hit each other at the same time. And then they roll their defense dice. Now this guy, because Dragon... oh, wait, no, actually he doesn't. My Dragon has a monofilament blade, which means he'd get 6+ saves. So he'd be dead. Dragon, of course, gets a 4+. And because he's in close combat, he specializes in close combat defense dice. So he is successful in defending. So this guy's dead. And Dragon is fine. And that's pretty much it for close combaters rolling. Now, of course, there are some exceptions. There is, of course, multiple people in close combat. Now, for Dragon, this is not a problem. That's one of his class's special abilities. He can't be overwhelmed in close combat, and he also can't be stopped from leaving close combat too. So we'll get to both of them. So let's just say, let's move Dragon to the side here, and we'll bring Hawk in. So Hawk's in a bit of a rough spot here. What happens? Well, the same thing happens. Hawk can use whatever dice he wants in close combat, but of course he only gets one of them this time. We'll just use the D8s for Hawk. He's not doing well. And then one of these guys gets a dice. So we'll say this guy is attacking, this guy is assisting. So what does that mean? He hits, and then what does the assist mean? It means that it's -1 defense. So now Hawk needs a 5, which he doesn't get with a 1, and he would take a wound here. Now if Hawk wishes to then go, oh, I'm out of here, bro, he would then have to take attacks from both of them, which he'd take 1, and he'd defend. But that would be bad news. Now, Dragon, on the other hand, doesn't have to worry about either of these things. They have to attack him one at a time, they get no bonuses, and also, if Dragon just goes, nah, he just goes, nah, and moves out. That's it. That's how Dragon works. Finally, we'll bring Cyberbobby and our medic in. So, we've got some problems. There's these 3 guys who are poised to start shooting people. This is not a good situation for our friends here. So Cyberbobby pulls out a micro grenade and goes, I'm gonna blow these guys to smithereens. And so he'll use D6s. Yeah. And he's successful. So he picks up the blast template and he puts it over the guy who's within 12, because all throwing weapons are pretty much a 12-inch range. So he puts it on this guy, and as we can see, he's blown up all of them. So you like getting in a group, do you? Well, here's a micro grenade for you. Now the cool thing with grenades is, depending on what type they are, frag for human enemies, EMP for robot enemies, they give -2 defense to whatever enemy type that they're good against. An EMP grenade will still blow up a group of dudes though. It's just that they get their normal defense, so we need 6s here. Oh, 1 survives. So 2 die. We'll just pretend all 3 of them die. There. Okay, great. The problem is that we've got a group of guys coming in, and they're going to have good range next turn. So what do? Well, we activate our friend the medic here, and she has Smoke grenades. So she'll use a D8. She rolled an 8. Oh no. Oh geez, what's happened? Well, she's got the 12-inch range, so we'll say that she wanted to throw, we'll say the smoke grenade here, just so that it stays in visual view. So what the hell happens here? I mean, I rolled a 2, I missed. Does the grenade just fail? No, grenades don't fail. What happens is you take your D10 and you roll it. And then it moves half that number, which would be 10, so 5, in the direction that was pointing, which was that way. So it would move 5 inches that way off the board. Let's pretend that the arrow pointed this way. So I would move like 5 inches this way and it would end up covering these guys. Now smoke grenades end up blocking line of sight. You can't shoot through them. If you're in them, you can't shoot out of them, which means they're kind of like a semi-permanent obstruction. So that's pretty cool. And then if you are lost in a smoke haze, you do the same thing. You roll this, and that's the direction that your guy moves in, instead of wherever he happened to be. So for Cyber Bobby, we roll, and it's only the direction it points in, so Cyber Bobby can move 6 inches out this away. Or however long he wants to move. He can just move straight to the end, and then he can go like 4 inches this way, for example. You know, whatever Cyber Bobby would like to do. And this is also accurate for any regular grenades as well. So if Cyber Bobby had screwed up his attack, it would have drifted. Now this could mean that it still blows up some people, but as you can see, it might not. If you're enjoying this video, think about liking and subscribing. It's a harsh world out there with Megacorps, and you need all the help you can get. So we've been talking about blowing people up and all that kind of stuff. What about hacking? You know, maybe you've got a drone that you want to hack into. Maybe you need to hack into a computer system. Maybe you need to hack into HSEC's radar system. How do you do that? Well, you get your splicer. We have Raven here, and basically Raven here can hack in a few ways. So there's 2 ways to hack: interfacing and wireless. Wireless pretty much covers drones and security measures. Now this also counts if they're your friendly drone or a opposing drone. And basically what hacking does is that you can control a drone, or you can just turn the system off, or you can keep it under your control and not have to worry about it. So it's pretty much the same way as normal. Say this is your friendly drone. Well, friendly drones you only need to roll a 4 on. So we definitely got a 4 there. So this friendly drone can now be moved by Raven. Now if we're hacking into a computer system, it's slightly different. So HSEC has firewalls. And how do firewalls work? Well, basically firewalls work by just adding that difficulty to the dice roll. So we'll say this is a firewall 2, so instead of 4s we need 6s, so I think D8's are probably a good move for here, and that would be a critical fail, but you know, you get the idea. Once you hack into it, you are successfully done. Now the other way you can hack is by interfacing, which is by moving up to the thing. Generally this will cover objective markers. Now objective markers, depending on what they are, may have security themselves, and they follow the same rules as normal. The only difference is, of course, with objective markers you cannot hack them from your 18-inch range. The other thing is to keep your hack up, you must remain within 18 inches of the object. So that means that if Raven was to say go 24 inches away from this hacked tower, it would stop being hacked. Her drone would also drop out of range, but it wouldn't become hostile. Now, if it was a drone that was a HSEC drone that you took control of and then used to shoot up their own guys, then it would become hostile again. And that's pretty much hacking in a nutshell. So you need to bypass, and you're good to go. Now, also some objective markers will need multiple hacks. So they may need 2 hacks to get through, say one is to spoof the credentials of the hacker, and the other one is to actually get the data off the system that you're looking for. Both of these require, of course, firewall rolls, and they could increase. So for example, spoofing your credentials maybe only as a firewall 1, while actually finding the information you're looking for as a firewall 3, for example. This is based on you, pretty much. How difficult do you want to make the objective to gain? Finally, the last set of actions are interact. There are 3 of these. Interact itself, of course, is acting towards any piece of terrain, ally, or NPC. These can range from playing a bomb, to applying a medikit, to freeing a hostage. Connect, of course, is connecting to an ally drone, because you just need to connect the first time. Once you've connected to the drone, you just sacrifice dice to have it take its turn. It doesn't matter what dice you sacrifice, it always gets d8s. So, cool beans on that one. And then, of course, you have the final action, which is aim. And aim just adds +2 to hit, -2 to defense, as long as you follow up directly with an attack. Yeah, so anyone can do that, so it can be good. Obviously, you still need to roll and get a 4. Even though in most scenarios, aiming would just be 1 dice rather than 2. You just need to get a 4 on 1 dice. Yeah, so HSEC. What the hell is HSEC? Well, HSEC is the AI-controlled opponents. And basically, they come in 3 flavors. So, level 1 gets a free move and a D6 action. The next level of HSEC is level 2, and they get a free move and 2 D8 actions. Then the last group of HSEC are level 3, and they get 3 D10 moves and, of course, their free move. Now, on paper, it seems like these guys are even stronger than agents, right? Yes and no, basically. 3d10 action sounds really strong, and it does, but they never crit. So, they can only ever roll 1 dice, and while they may hit a fair bit, they may not actually be able to do any real damage, depending on the situation. Also, HSEC only has pretty rudimentary AI. Move towards a target, take cover if possible, and shoot. They don't really use spatial thinking, they just move until they have a good shot, and then they keep moving forward until they're basically comfortably in range. However, HSEC, as an optional upgrade, can have enemy agents, which of course are just your guys, but bad. And they can have multiples of them, and there's even a rumor that HSEC have access to a mech suit. Now, with HSEC, of course, this is where this little foot shredder comes in place. What does the D4 do? Basically, these guys come in from 4 areas on the map. Now, most of the time these are on the edge of the board, corners generally, but you could also change it up and make them come in from other sections. So what you do is you give each one of these ones a number, and then you simply roll a dice, which is a 4, so they come in from 4, and then you roll again, and they come in at 1. But how many guys come in and at what level? So each game basically takes place over 7 turns. Each turn, 2 lots of HSEC will come in. And they start like this. Turn 1, 2 level 1 guys. So that would be 4 total. Then the next turn, 3 level 1 guys. Then the turn after that, 2 level 2s. And then the turn after that, 3 level 2s, and so on and so forth. Until, of course, you hit 7. At turn 7, your guys need to be getting their ass out there, otherwise they lose the mission, basically. Unless, of course, the people who have got the objectives escape. Level 3 security is on the way. We better hurry up if we don't want to end up corpses. Each turn is played like this. Agents, HSEC spawns, HSEC's turn. So the way the game comes to an end is that you have generally 2 objectives. You have to succeed and get off the board from the opposite side of the board. And then once you do that, that's it, the game's over. Now, the only person who actually needs to escape is, let's just say you stole a prototype and you hacked into a database and stole some stuff out of that. The person holding the prototype and the person who stole the stuff from the database, they need to get out. Now, if that's the same person, groovy. If it's not, they both need to get out. If turn 7 rolls around, those guys aren't out by the end, that's it. Game's over. You have lost. Now, that being said, that doesn't necessarily mean your agents die. Speaking of which, while we're talking about agents, each agent has 4 wounds. Each time they take a wound, they lose access to their largest dice. So, if they take 1 wound, no D10s. If they take 2 wounds, no D8s or D10s. And if they take 3 wounds, nothing. They no longer have access to it, which means someone else needs to help them. They can still move their 6 inches, but that's it. So they'll need healing ASAP. Now obviously if you are healed at any point, you get the dice back, so that's great. Which means sometimes it can be worth popping a healing item at d6s and then getting your d10s back for the turn. Other than that, that's the only way that your agents can actually die. That being said, there's really no upgrade potential in these guys either, so don't lose too much sleep if they die. Basically, just make a new one or just pretend that he somehow survived. It's your game. And then, of course, each turn plays out the same. You know, boom, 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 game over, done. And you pack up and you have fun. That's it. Let's get on a game feel. So this game feels great to play. I think it's a lot of fun. I love the dice system. It's such a cool way to do things. And you know, depending on what order you want to do things in and what importance you place them at, you use higher dice for different things. Sometimes you'll take a chance on something that's not quite as important, especially if you specialize in it, because 2d6, pretty decent chance of succeeding a lot of the time. And then it also comes into a fact of, do you take a chance as a non-splicer to hack into a computer, or do you take a chance as the Shiver to try and destroy something? Because the other guys are too far away to do it this turn, you've really got to get it done. That's what I really love, is there's this very nice balance here, and even some of the other abilities. Do I buff one of my own guys? Do I debuff an enemy? Do I try to do this for an enemy? Should I ignore the enemy this turn, hope it doesn't damage me until next turn? What I love about Exploit Zero though, is it makes you feel like these choices are important, but it doesn't kick you in the teeth if you screw up somewhere, right? It's not as severe as some other games where, you know, one wrong move and you lose the game, you know, or this is gonna cascade into you losing the game. A lot of the time you can bounce back from this. So that's something that's great, but it also goes, well, this choice is still important. So if you'd made it, you'd have an easier time right now. I also adore the critical hit system. It's just brilliant. Critically, you know, doesn't really add much as a benefit to the roll, but you get the dice back, which means suddenly you get 4 actions. My kid and I were playing this the other day, and he got 2 criticals in a row and managed to get 3d8 actions that turn, which was just crazy. So it's so cool to see that critical successes are really great, and of course critical failures are not so great, but they're not terrible either, because if you've got dice left, you can just roll them and get up. You can't use your free movement to get up though. I also think that the target number being just a flat number of 4 makes the game so much more straightforward. You don't have to remember giant tables, you don't have to remember that this gun does this, and this gun does that, and this gun does this. You know, generally it's like, yeah, it's 4s across the board unless you have modifiers that state otherwise. So it's brilliant just to be able to go, well, what do I need to roll for this? Well, it's a 4. And obviously there are some things that, you know, change that dice roll, but overall, generally knowing that it's just a 4 and they add 1 or 2 to the difficulty, or you take 2 off, or, you know, they get -2 their armor, or whatever it happens to be. I just think that's really great. So the other thing is the length is also a massive plus for me. It doesn't overstay its welcome. You know, it's like 45 minutes to an hour if you know what you're doing. And so you can just bash out a game very quickly if you're just looking for a little kick of, you know, that strategy. It's fantastic for that. The other thing is it's always good to, you know, have, I think, a co-op game in the back pocket, just in case the competitive game goes badly. And you know, your friend's feeling a bit, or you're feeling a bit, and then you can go, well, let's work together at something. And then you can both feel happy or commiserate when you lose. So it's just, I think it's great. This is a bit of a hard one. I like the game, and I think it's fun, but, and it's one big luscious but, one of the major things I look for in war games is longevity. I like being able to play a game multiple times. Now, of course, something like Space Skits is of course not intended to be played long term. The difference is that Space Skits is super duper easy to pick up comparatively to Exploit Zero. And while Exploit Zero is quick to play and learn once you actually sort of get a couple games in, I personally felt that it was a little complicated to teach to new players. I had a game with family members and I pulled this out and I was like, let's play a game of this, and they all got fairly lost. Now, I think giving them a couple more goes, I think they'd be fine and this could be easily done, but it's just that little bit too complicated. But then again, It's also a step below Frostgrave as well in the complexity. I think if it had a progression system like Frostgrave, it would be a no-brainer. I would absolutely recommend getting this game. I'd say go out, get the game, have fun. It is slightly cheaper than Frostgrave, but not by much either. But I think the thing is, even though it's cheaper, I think you get more bang for your buck out of Frostgrave or Stargrave or one of those other games, Silver Bayonet, you know, something that gives you a bit of something to chew on. If you love Cyberpunk though, and you think it sounds cool, give it a twizz. Have a look at it, see how you feel. There's much worse things you can spend 25 bucks on. AUD, by the way. And then that's it. Huh? What? Oh, you mean there's still some video left to go? Yeah, that's right, there is something. Something that makes my little critique about longevity a little bit of a non-issue. So, back during Stuff You Need, you may remember that I mentioned that the Omnibus is the first edition rulebook updated to second edition and has 2 of the additional first edition rulebooks in there as well, so an Omnibus. However, what about that third one I mentioned? Well, this is the third book, Hostile Takeover, and, well, what does it do? Well, it makes Exploit Zero a competitive game rather than a co-op one. Instead of fighting security teams, your agents will now be leading them into combat. Now, the gameplay is mostly the same with some little changes here and there to balance out agent versus agent combat, and I'm not going to go over all of them here. Actually, I'm not going to go over most of them. And why? Because I feel like we should leave some secrets for you if you want to buy the game for yourself. In Hostile Takeover, you make a company and you fight your friend, sibling, parent, or dog's opposing company. There is a battle map, which I will now show up. So there's a line down the middle that is the contested zone, and the other ones are owned by your company, with different levels of security. Now, each zone is fought over, and each time you win, you can move further into your opponent's zone. You take control of that zone that you just fought over. And your goal is to capture the enemy HQ. At the same time, of course, your opponent is not idle. They'll also be traveling towards your HQ or claiming old territories back. Now, the other thing you've got to remember is that your territories must be linked to attack from them. So if you've made a line up to the enemy HQ and you're going, next turn I'm going to attack, and then someone comes in, your opponent comes in and cuts that line out, well, you got to rebuild that line before you can go for the HQ. So, you know, go beeline straight to the HQ, not always the strongest of moves. And then, of course, once you pick the zone, you set up the board and play. Now, what makes this slightly different from the base game is that each agent you control will get a squad of forces to go with them. Now, you have regular HSEC guys who come in squads of 3, but you also have some more specialized troops, you know, sort of specialists that can help you do things like hack things and that kind of stuff. Or just some more, you know, super soldier version of them, more elite versions of each one of these groups of soldiers, as well as just, you know, some extra sort of special units. And the number of forces you get is based on the zone. So, for example, in contested zones, you get 3 agents, and they all get a unit each. Now, depending on what you've sort of done as the number of units, you could find yourself, you know, maybe getting, you know, a group of D8 guys, 2 groups of D6 guys, and maybe like a couple of specialists, and that's your army. So your agents lead that army into combat. Now, the further you get into enemy territory, the more troops you get to play with. This also includes you as well. So, you know, if you're deep in enemy territory, you get more guys to play with as well. So, generally you don't get more than 5 agents, and these can be any combination of agents. You do not need to have one of each agent. You could have a whole entire group of Ronin if you wished. Not quite sure why you'd take just Ronin, but, you know, that's fine. That's your decision. The only stipulation limitations you have is on what units you can take based on where you're attacking and how many agents you have. Obviously, if you have more agents, so if you have 5 agents, you have the max number, you can start whacking D10 guys on the board, you can get your battle mechs, you can get your, you know, special agents and all that kind of stuff, so it's nothing too crazy at that point. But if you're fighting in the contested zone in the middle, you get, you know, you get like 2-3 agents, and, you know, you get a small group of guys that are generally going to be D6 dudes. Now, of course, your overall goal in the game is to force your opponent off the board, which you can of course do by killing all of them or just forcing them to escape. Now the other thing that you'll find on a game board is that you will find two kind of objectives here. You will find citizens and you will find VIPs. Your goal is to rescue these guys. If you rescue them, you get RP, resource points. And what can you do with resource points? Well, you can buy sort of temporary buffs that last for one battle. You can buy these before the battle, not during. And they basically function sort of like how Galactic Conquest does in Battlefront 2, the old school Battlefront 2. You know, you could buy upgrades and pop them before the battle. Now, of course, unlike Battlefront 2, all the upgrades pretty much function around the same points. You can also use them to, you know, buy some pretty nasty little, like, sabotages as well for your enemy army. Maybe they can take less guys, you can take more guys. Or maybe your guys are just better this turn, you know, they get +1 to all their actions or whatever. That's the kind of stuff you can buy. So obviously, capturing these guys is a high priority. The other thing is that your agents themselves become famous. They get reputation points. What do reputation points do? Well, functionally, not much really. But what they do is for each reputation point your guy has, he gets +1 to his dice roll to convince these people to come with him and join his company. So obviously the more reputation you have, the much easier time you'll have of getting all these VIPs and civilians off the board. Now of course these guys can die, you know, you can shoot them or blow them up, but you know, you get a bad reputation basically. But the good news is that yeah, so you know, functionally, agents actually have a reason to try and survive now, because if you've got Dragon here, who is, you know, well known across the verse and only needs like 2s to get dudes off the board, you're gonna want to keep him alive. That being said, he's now a target for your opponent who would really like to shoot Dragon in the face and kill him, so you lose that benefit, which you can if he dies. So that's basically how the board functions. Now, of course, there is one other minor thing. It's not you go, I go, it becomes alternating activations, just like in one-page rules, and that's about it for the board state. So of course, once you've played on the board, whoever was successful, by the way, I should probably mention that it doesn't necessarily mean you capture the most guys. Just for the record, it means that you kill, you force the enemy company to leave. So in some ways, it's sort of objective-based and destruction-based, because maybe once you shoot all their guys to pieces, they don't want their agents to stay behind and they'll run away. And that's basically how it happens. And then once you've done that, you've captured the zone, it's your zone now. And if they want to capture it back, they can, but they have to fight for it. So on their turn, you play another game. Now, once the HQ is captured, the owner gets one last chance. They can recapture their HQ on their battle map turn. If they fail, it's done. The campaign is over and Dick Kicker Incorporated is the winner. So now for me, this introduces longevity into the game, which I enjoy. And of course, the best part about kicking the shit out of each other in this game is that you can move back to the co-op side and have a victory together and, you know, bury the hatchet, hopefully. I really enjoy this game, and Hostile Takeover honestly makes it last that much longer for me. There's a bit of a give and take here. I can sit down and play a campaign with my buddy, and we can sort of try and outdo each other, which I think is a positive. Honestly, I think this game needed like just that little dash or something else. I think the action and dice system are very good too. They do have other games that I believe use the same system, so I'll definitely be checking them out because I think it's great. Anything that lets me roll extra dice is always good. And you know, if you want to have a break from one of your other crazy competitive games, this is a good game to sort of take a break with. And you also don't have to whip out Shadowrun or Cyberpunk to get your fix. So I think that's pretty good. Now also this Friday, so this video has come out Monday here, so 4 days from now, I'm going to be trying to do the starter mission of Exploit Zero, which is called Gun Monkeys, and I'm going to be trying to do it with one agent, so it's a bit of a challenge run. So, because you're meant to do it with 5 agents. I have had a couple practice games at it. It's going to be interesting. But that's it for me for this video, so thank you once again for joining me. and I will see you on the next video. So you guys have a good one. Catches!